That night, my daughter curled up in my arms in the dark, silent like a small shadow. Her arms wrapped around my waist, trembling slightly, even though the heater hummed steadily in the background. When I pulled up her sleeve to check an old bruise, I saw a new one, deeper, darker, as if someone had gripped her arm hard enough to turn her skin a deep purple. I didn't need to ask who it came from. If you've ever had to choose between dignity and family, leave a comment, hit like, share this story, and follow the channel so you don't miss what comes next. My name is Charlotte Whitmore, 35 years old, a remote children's book editor based in Portland, Maine. I live with my 8-year-old daughter, Ellie. Since divorcing my ex-husband, Andrew, nearly 3 years ago, I've tried to keep things as normal as possible for Ellie. Once a month, I take her to her paternal grandparents' house in Cape Elizabeth for what they call cousin camp. I know Ellie doesn't like going, even if she's never said a word. It's in the way her hands move slower while packing, her eyes settle more often on the floor, and when I ask, "Are you okay?" she gives a tight smile and nods quickly, like speed could chase away the worry. That Friday afternoon, when I dropped Ellie off at the White Estate, the air was already chilly. Wind from the bay swept through the backyard, making the willow branches shake like they were trying to escape the ground. I still remember the look on my ex-mother-in-law, Sylvia's face, when she saw my old Subaru parked on her red brick driveway. She wore a beige cardigan, her silver hair neatly cropped, and as I opened the door for Ellie, she stepped out with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You're 15 minutes late, Charlotte," she said without checking the time. "We got stuck in traffic on Forest Avenue," I replied, keeping my voice calm. "Ellie's cousins are already dressed for dinner. Is she wearing that?" I glanced at Ellie's navy blue hoodie and sneakers. She tightened her grip on my hand. I bent down and kissed her cheek. "I'll pick you up at 4 p.m. on Sunday, okay?" Ellie nodded and stepped back as Sylvia reached for her hand. "Ellie, you haven't even said hi to your cousins. Come in." "Colin's been asking for you," Sylvia added with a forced smile. I froze hearing Colin's name. He was the oldest grandchild, Andrew's nephew, a 10-year-old boy with a polished charm adults liked, but Ellie never mentioned him. Happily, I went home and tried to focus on the manuscript I'd been editing, but even as the clock struck 11 p.m., I was still flipping pages, not to work, but to drown out the tight discomfort in my chest. I couldn't sleep, not from caffeine, but from a nameless anxiety that my body recognized before my mind did. Sunday morning, I woke up early, made coffee, and packed Ellie's coat into the car. By 3 p.m., I was at Sylvia's gate, but the automatic iron gate didn't open. I rang the buzzer. No answer. On the third try, I finally got a call from Andrew. "They're in the backyard," he said flatly, offering no explanation. I walked through the gate, down the gravel path. Children's shadows flickered past the back window. Just as I was about to call for Ellie, a choked sob broke through the noise. Not loud, not panicked, just pain. The kind that comes from someone used to being hurt. I turned into the backyard and found Ellie sitting on the wooden deck, one arm clutching the other. Sylvia knelt beside her, eyes cold, voice precise. "You need to apologize to Colin for grabbing his toy. No one hurt you without reason." Colin stood behind them, arms crossed, his spotless sneakers placed inches from Ellie's shoulder. I don't remember how quickly I moved. I only knew my arms were around her, and I was lifting her gently. "Ellie, let me see your arm." She hesitated, then raised it. A red mark circled her wrist, unmistakably left by someone's fingers. "Just a minor incident," Sylvia said evenly. "Kids played a bit rough. Happens all the time." I looked her straight in the eye. "We're leaving." "Charlotte, don't make a scene like you always do," she replied, her smile paper-thin. Colin mumbled something behind me. I didn't catch it, but Ellie flinched. On the drive home, Ellie said nothing, but once we stepped into the kitchen, warm yellow light casting soft shadows on her pale face, she whispered something I wasn't prepared for. "That wasn't the first time, Mom. I hadn't expected it. That was only the beginning." I knelt beside her, set down the mug of hot cocoa, and gently touched her wrist. Even after 3 days, the bruise hadn't faded. The purple outline of fingers still lingered, pressed deep into her skin. Ellie instinctively pulled away, then exhaled softly. "I didn't want to make you mad," she said, eyes fixed on the floor. "You did nothing wrong," I said, steady. "I just need to know what happened." She hesitated, then whispered, "Colin pushed me on Saturday. Then when I got up, he grabbed my arm really tight. When Grandma came over, she said I took his toy first and made me apologize." I sat beside her, leaning back against the fridge. Part of me wanted to stand up, call Sylvia, and unleash everything I'd held back. But another part, the one that had endured years of polished condescension, knew that wouldn't help Ellie now. I remembered Ellie's 4th birthday at Sylvia's house. Back then, I was still Andrew's wife. The party was immaculate. Silver and pink balloons, a 3-tiered cake from a high-end bakery in Scarborough. Ellie only wanted a chocolate cake with M&Ms, but Sylvia said that was tacky. When Ellie cried over wanting a yellow paper crown, Sylvia gently took her into another room. When they came back, the crown was gone, and Ellie's face had gone pale. Sort of ignored it. I ignored a lot for peace, for the illusion of family, because I thought all kids had to learn to fit in. But those memories now felt like guilt, not wisdom. "Ellie," I asked softly, "has anything like this happened before?" She nodded, her hair brushing my cheek as she tilted her head. "Last month, I got locked in the coat closet. Colin said it was a game. Then he left. I banged the door, but no one heard." My breath caught. My hand curled into a fist on my knee. "How long were you in there?" "Remember the day you were 10 minutes late?" "That day," she said quickly, blinking hard. "I didn't tell Grandma. She said if I kept tattling, no one would want to play with me." I sat still, listening only to the ticking of the kitchen clock. Little pieces of truth dropped one by one, forming a picture I had refused to see for months. That night, after Ellie fell asleep, I pulled out my phone and started searching. I didn't know what I was looking for, laws, advice, maybe just stories like mine, but I couldn't stop scrolling. Every article said the same thing. Don't ignore the signs. I opened the photo folder on my laptop. Pictures from cousin camp. Some showed Ellie smiling, without light in her eyes. In others, she stood, half hidden behind the table, her shoulders slightly hunched. I couldn't understand how I hadn't seen it sooner. Maybe I hadn't wanted to. Or maybe I was too used to being told I overreacted. Andrew used to say I was too sensitive whenever I disagreed with his mother. When I pushed back against Sylvia comparing Ellie to the other grandkids, Andrew would just smile and say, "She's just helping you understand how Ellie should behave." I remember exactly when Sylvia once told me, "Charlotte, you'd be a better mother if you weren't so soft-hearted." I gave her a tight smile and said nothing. But tonight, watching my daughter curl around her pillow in her sleep, I knew the last thing Ellie needed was a mother who knew her place. The next morning, I arrived at Ellie's school earlier than usual and asked to see the principal. I gave a brief summary of what had been going on, trying to keep my voice even, though my throat felt dry. The principal, Mrs. Morgan, listened quietly, then suggested I speak with the school counselor. "Sarah Lane has been monitoring Ellie's behavior for a while now," she said. "If there's anything out of the ordinary, she'd be the one to know." Mrs. Lane was in her early 40s, with softly curled brown hair and a calm, steady gaze. When I entered her office, Ellie was in her art class. "I'm aware," she said. "Ellie hasn't said anything directly, but she's changed. She's withdrawn, doesn't laugh as much, and her drawings have become darker." She opened her desk drawer and pulled out a folder of Ellie's artwork. One drawing made me stop breathing. It showed a little girl inside a dark closet, a tall figure looming outside with an angry expression. "What did she say when she drew this?" I asked softly. She said, "I'm just drawing what it feels like when no one hears you," Miss Lane repeated, her voice sad. By the time I left her office, there wasn't a shred of doubt left in me. What Ellie had been going through wasn't just discomfort or awkwardness, it was fear. It was trauma. But one thing was clear. I wasn't going to let my child grow up scared, not for another day. That evening, I was steeping tea when the phone rang. The screen showed Andrew's name. Even after 3 years of living apart, the sight of it still made me tense up, like I needed to brace for a debate. Hello. Charlotte, my mom just called. She said you went to the school and started talking about some nonsense with Colin and Ellie. His voice was flat, not accusatory, just cold. I didn't talk about nonsense. I spoke to the counselor because Ellie is struggling. And there are good reasons to believe she's not safe around your family. She's fine. She just has an active imagination. Colin's a spirited kid, a bit stubborn sometimes, but there's nothing serious going on. Have you actually seen anything yourself? Or are you just parroting your mother again? Silence. Then he sighed. Charlotte. Colin's cousin used to play rough when he was little too. It was never malicious. Kids are just kids. You're overreacting. I closed my eyes, leaning against the kitchen counter. The cool tile pressed against my shoulder, grounding me. He was the same as ever, always choosing the easier side over facing an uncomfortable truth. She has bruises on her arm. She was locked in a closet, and she was forced to apologize to the one who hurt her. That's not play. That's abuse. That's not how it happened. You're not even thinking, Andrew. That's the problem. I hung up as his voice began to shift toward exhaustion and irritation. Not because I didn't want to hear more, but because I'd heard enough for years. The way he made me feel guilty for having doubts. The way he turned every gut instinct I had into an overreaction. I sat at the dining table, opened my laptop, and typed a blank headline. Notes on unusual behavior around Ellie. Not for a report, not to show anyone, just to keep things clear. Line by line, every small detail I'd dismissed before now fit together like a puzzle. 4 months ago, Ellie came home from Sylvia's and said, "Grandma doesn't like when I wear dresses with drawings." She said it offhandedly during dinner, pushing green beans around her plate. I brushed it off. 2 months ago, she suddenly didn't want to sleep alone after returning from cousin camp. I comforted her, assuming it was just school stress. Last week, she started biting her nails again, a habit she'd kicked in kindergarten. I wrote everything down. I didn't leave anything out. The next morning, I called Marlene, my closest friend from college, now a child advocacy attorney in Boston. "I'm not sure this is serious enough for legal action," I began, "but I need advice." "What's the situation?" she asked, her voice calm and sharp. I told her everything, step by step. Marlene didn't interrupt, except for the soft clicks of her keyboard now and then. "Charlotte," she said when I finished, "this isn't minor. If Ellie's been harmed physically and emotionally, and if adults are enabling or silencing it, that's considered endangerment. Maine's laws on this are fairly strong. I don't want to drag her through a legal process. She's only 8. I get that. But if she's unsafe in any environment, doing nothing is the greater risk." I wrote down everything Marlene advised: contact the school counselor, document every photo, keep behavioral logs, and above all, do not send Ellie back to Sylvia's until things are resolved. That evening, Sylvia texted, "Colin would love for Ellie to join our Halloween party next week. Hope she's not too busy to enjoy some fun." I reread the message. No check-in, no apology, just another request dressed in flawless manners. I replied briefly, "Ellie will not attend. Please respect this decision." 5 minutes later, Andrew called. "You can't just pull her away from the family like this. My mom's really upset." "And what about Ellie? Is anyone in your family upset that she's scared?" "You're blowing this way out of proportion. Where's your proof?" I stayed silent. I could hear him breathing heavily on the other end. "I think you need to talk to someone. Maybe you're projecting your stress onto her." My chest tightened. "I have talked to someone, and I'm not projecting anything. I'm protecting my daughter from people who think her feelings are fiction." I hung up without hesitation. That night, when Ellie climbed into bed, she asked softly, "Mom, am I a kid who makes trouble for other people?" I pulled the blanket over her shoulder, smoothing her hair. "No, you're the one brave enough to speak up when no one else will." She nodded slightly, then turned her face into the pillow. The call came around noon on Tuesday, just as I was editing the final draft of The Quiet Garden. The screen showed an unfamiliar name, but the area code rang familiar. South Portland. I hesitated a second before picking up, my voice barely more than a whisper in the air. "Hello, this is Charlotte." The voice on the other end hesitated. "Miss Charlotte Whitmore? This is Ashley Randall. I used to babysit part-time for the Richardson family. You probably remember Mrs. Sylvia?" I sat upright, my right hand grazing the edge of the table for steadiness. "I remember. What's going on, Ashley?" "I heard a few things recently from someone I know about Ellie and Colin." Silence. "It didn't just happen with Ellie," she continued. "I know, I probably shouldn't be calling. I signed a confidentiality agreement when I left, but—" "I'm not asking you to break the law," I cut in, keeping my voice steady. "But if there's something important—" "I'm listening." I heard Ashley exhale. "When I was still working there was a little girl named Maya, one of the Richardsons' cousins. She got locked in the basement bathroom after a birthday party. Colin said it was punishment for hiding his teddy bear. Mrs. Sylvia saw the whole thing, but just told Maya to stop being dramatic." I tightened my grip on my pen. The tip snapped with a faint crack. "Do you have anything in writing?" "I have a few messages between me and Maya's aunt from that night. But they accepted a settlement, and I was let go for being unprofessional." I swallowed hard. "Ashley, would you be willing to share this with my attorney?" She paused for a few seconds, then said, "If it means that girl doesn't have to be scared every weekend, I'll do it." I wrote down Ashley's number and immediately called Marlene. "I have a witness," I said directly. "Any details?" "Her name's Ashley Randall, former babysitter. She has indirect evidence and testimony about a similar incident involving Colin, and Mrs. Sylvia witnessed it." My mother let her hand take long to respond. "Perfect. That establishes a behavioral pattern. If we can prove this wasn't an isolated incident with Ellie, but part of a repeated pattern, we shift the whole narrative." That night, after Ellie fell asleep, I sat alone in the kitchen, typing up everything Ashley had said. Each word opened another door in my memory that I had once tried to close. I remembered when Sylvia casually said, "Colin's just learning how to assert himself." I remembered the look Andrew gave me when he said, "Don't wreck the family over a few bumps in the road." The question replayed in my mind. Did they not know, or did they know and simply not care? On Wednesday morning, I went to see Miss Lane, the school counselor, with everything I had: photos of Ellie's injuries, transcripts of our conversations, the audio recording of Ashley agreeing to testify, and all the emails exchanged with my attorney. Ms. Lane sat silently for a long time after reviewing them. "I'll have to file an official report with Child Protective Services," she said. "Based on what you've given me, this is no longer a private matter." "Thank you," I replied. "I didn't come here to avoid that. I just wanted to follow the right process." "Charlotte," Ms. Lane said, looking me in the eye, "you're doing the right thing." The next day, a representative from the Department of Family Services contacted me. They scheduled a home visit to speak with both me and Ellie. The appointment was set for a gray morning, the clouds hanging low over the rooftops. I prepared everything: documents, printed photos, and a plate of Ellie's favorite chocolate chip cookies. The investigator's name was Dana, a calm, middle-aged woman with a low, gentle voice. She sat down at the dining table, opened her folder, and glanced over at Ellie, coloring at the small table in the corner of the room. "What are you drawing?" Dana asked. "A deer hiding in the woods," Ellie replied without looking up. "Why is it hiding?" "Because someone outside is yelling." Dana turned to me. "That's all I need to know." After the session, Dana said she would continue gathering statements and schedule conversations with the other parties involved. As I walked her to the door, she rested a hand briefly on my shoulder. "Silence is often the first trap," she said. "You've opened the door out of it." That night, Ellie taped the deer drawing to the fridge. "Has it come out of the woods yet?" I asked. "It doesn't need to yet," she replied, "but at least it's not scared anymore." Just 2 days later, a formal threat arrived from Andrew via his attorney. On Friday afternoon, I received a thick envelope from the law offices of Madsen and Klein, stamped in red in the bottom left corner. The courier gave a small nod, as if he knew the contents were heavier than paper. I opened the envelope with a letter opener, and by the third line, my palms had begun to sweat. Andrew, through his lawyer, had filed a motion to monitor my so-called mental instability. The document accused me of creating a paranoid environment that heightened the child's anxiety and suggested I was exhibiting signs of alienation, deliberately damaging Ellie's view of her father. I reread that paragraph 3 times, just to be sure I wasn't imagining it. They were planning to use my daughter's pain as a counterstrike. That same night, I sent everything to Marlene. She called back in under an hour. "Stay calm," she said, steady, classic tactic. When they can't refute the truth, they go after the messenger. "Are you sure? Is there a chance they could win?" "Everything you've done is documented with witnesses and hard evidence. They're targeting emotion, not facts." I paced the living room while Ellie drew in her room. Her calm that evening only made me angrier. Since cutting ties with Sylvia's house, Ellie had started sleeping through the night. She brought books to school again. She no longer flinched when someone touched her shoulder. "Is there a way we can hit back?" I asked. "We don't hit back," Marlene said. "We keep going, by the book, by the law. But we may need one final blow. Something they can't twist." I understood. A piece of proof they couldn't deny. The next evening, while prepping dinner, I received a message from an unknown number. It was a video, less than a minute long. I stood frozen in the kitchen, spoon still in hand over the sauce. On the screen, a security camera clip played. Sylvia's living room, viewed from a ceiling angle. Colin stood behind Ellie and shoved her hard. She fell, hitting the wooden table. Sylvia was in the corner of the frame, turning her head away. Just below the video was a message. "The security feed uploads to the cloud. I can't go public, but I can't let them continue." I dropped into the kitchen chair, heart pounding. This was what Marlene needed, and what I, though I never wanted to admit it, had been waiting for. I sent the video to her immediately. Marlene replied with just 2 words: "We win." By Sunday morning, she had filed a supplemental emergency restraining request with the video attached. The response from the other law office came unusually fast. Another letter from Madsen and Klein, much softer in tone. They wanted to discuss further before legal proceedings escalate. "Don't let them draw you to the negotiation table," Marlene warned. "They are angling for a settlement. But what we want isn't compromise. It's a clear boundary." I nodded, eyes drifting toward the room where Ellie sat reading, her legs swinging off the edge of the bed. Since this all began, she hadn't once asked about her grandmother, or Colin, as if that memory had been neatly boxed up and sealed with silence. I printed a still from the video, the moment Ellie fell, her hand bracing behind her. I didn't show it to her, but I filed it alongside every note, every photo, every testimony I had collected. Not for revenge, but to remind myself some moments force a choice. Stay silent or protect. 3 days later, Sylvia emailed me. The subject line read only, "Reconsider." Inside were clipped, icy lines. "Charlotte, you're destroying an entire family. Colin is just a child. And you're building a case out of misunderstandings, if you have any decency left." I didn't reply. I forwarded it to Marlene with a short note. "They still don't see Ellie." That night, as Ellie climbed into bed, she asked me, "Mom, do we have to move far away?" "No, I think we're staying." "But you won't have to go to that house again." She nodded, then slipped under the blanket. "You okay?" "I don't have to pretend to forget anymore." I turned off the lights and sat next to her for a long time. In the dark, the familiar sounds of the city grew clearer, the hum of cars sliding along wet roads, someone's footsteps dashing past on the sidewalk. The morning of the preliminary hearing, a misty drizzle fell. I wore a gray coat, hair pulled up, and carried the thick case file Marlene had repeatedly told me to keep on hand until the last minute. Ellie didn't come with me that day. She stayed home with Miss Lane, baking cookies and coloring. All morning, I rehearsed what I needed to say, but when I stood before the court, only one thought stayed with me. I was there for my daughter, no one else. Andrew sat across the long wooden table. His suit didn't match the lost look on his face. Beside him sat his lawyer, a slim, middle-aged man with slicked back hair who kept tapping a pen on the edge of his folder like he was waiting for me to slip up. Sylvia wasn't present. Marlene said she wasn't permitted to attend, but someone had taken her place at the back row. Her personal assistant, a woman I'd seen a few times at family holidays. The judge was Mrs. Taylor, gray-haired with eyes like February frost. When she spoke, the whole room held its breath. Her voice wasn't loud, but every word rang like a bell. Miss Whitmore, you may begin. I stood, pen still in hand, but I didn't write. I didn't read my prepared notes. I spoke, briefly, with enough detail, about what Ellie had said, drawn and expressed. I presented photos of bruises, the audio with Ashley, and the security footage, evidence even their lawyer didn't try to refute. Andrew stayed silent most of the morning, but when it was his attorney's turn to speak, the man stood, nodded at the judge, then turned to me and opened with a line that almost made me laugh. Miss Charlotte, you're an artist, correct? Your profession is imagination. I looked at him for a beat. I'm a children's book editor, I said. My job is to make sure every detail is accurate and grounded. But you're not a psychologist. What makes you think you can interpret children's behavior and draw conclusions about abuse? I didn't make the conclusion, I answered. I listened to my daughter. I documented what she said. Experts, teachers, the school counselor, they confirmed it. I just didn't ignore it. In that moment, the judge's eyes flickered. She gave the faintest nod, just once. Midway through the session, Marlene stood and requested to add testimony. Sylvia's assistant, her name was Lauren Miller, stepped forward holding a printout. None of us had expected it, not even me. I have internal emails between Mrs. Sylvia Richardson and the principal of Maplewood School, where Colin attended 2nd and 3rd grade, she said, eyes fixed on the judge. But the emails documented 3 covered-up incidents. A girl pushed down the stairs, a boy hit over the head with a lunchbox, and a child locked in a bathroom for nearly 30 minutes. Each case shared one thing in common. Colin was involved, Sylvia donated, and the matter disappeared. I sat still, silent, but my hand squeezed the pen so tightly the tip cracked in two. If you've ever stayed quiet because no one believed you, or been blamed simply for speaking the truth, leave a comment. Share this story if you believe someone needs to hear it. After the hearing, Judge Taylor issued an emergency order. Colin was to have no contact with Ellie under any circumstances. Supervised visitation would be handled by court-appointed staff, and Andrew was only permitted to see her in the presence of a social worker at the Family Resource Center. I didn't feel relief. What I felt was something sturdier, like a shield. That afternoon, I picked Ellie up from school. She ran out, backpack slipping off one shoulder, cheeks flushed pink from the cold. "Mom, Miss Lane said my drawing got picked to hang in the school hallway," she said, eyes sparkling. "Which one?" "The dear one, the one you said was brave." I laughed. She said it felt like a silent speech. That night, while I was doing the dishes, my phone buzzed with a new message. It was from an unknown address, but only had 3 words. "I'm ready." Attached was a photo of a journal page, the handwriting shaky but clear. "Mom says I can't tell the story in the dark room. If I do, everyone will hate me." I didn't know who sent it, but I knew this wasn't just about Ellie anymore. I printed 3 copies of the photo, along with the original email and metadata Marlene had verified. No one knew the sender, but the content was hauntingly familiar. The wording, the way the child explained fear through silence. It resembled Ellie too closely. Except this wasn't my daughter's writing. It belonged to another child who had lived through the same thing under the same roof. "This isn't a family matter anymore," Marlene said when I sent the copies to her office. "This is a pattern, and if we can prove systematic cover-ups, the court will have to expand the investigation." I nodded, though my chest felt heavier than ever. That evening, Ellie and I made pizza together. She arranged the pepperoni slices into a heart shape and added 3 olives in the center. "Do you think someone else got hurt by Colin too?" she asked, not looking up. Maybe, I said softly, and I think someone's beginning to speak up. Ellie nodded, as if she already knew. I don't want anyone else to have to hide. It makes you feel small inside. I dried my hands and sat beside her. You're not small. Not even a little. After dinner, I reopened the blog I had created a month earlier, where I had been posting short entries about our journey to protect Ellie. I never named names, just feelings, details, and quiet moments most people wouldn't think twice about. I wrote about the first night Ellie slept without a nightlight. I shared about the art class where she drew a deer standing in the woods, but its eyes turned toward the light. I posted a new entry titled, When Children Learn to Be Quiet Just to Be Loved. I only hoped a few readers would understand that truth doesn't always come in screams. Sometimes it hides inside unusually well-behaved children who've been quiet for far too long. 2 days later, the emails started pouring in. A woman in Connecticut wrote that her daughter had once been locked in a storage room for crying too much after losing a game. A father in Vermont said his son refused to visit the grandparents during holidays, but they all assumed he was just too sensitive. An elementary school teacher said she'd once filed a report after a student drew a picture just like Ellie's, but the matter was quickly handled internally. I read every line, every sentence, and saved them all. Marlene told me to start building a secondary file, not to bring to court, but to clarify one thing. This wasn't isolated, and I wasn't alone. A week later, I got a call from the Maine State Family Support Center. They invited me to join a parent feedback group, an internal advisory board helping to reform school safety and external supervision policies. I said yes without hesitation. The first meeting was held in a third-floor conference room with big windows overlooking the Fore River. On the table were bottled water, ginger cookies, and a blank whiteboard. The facilitator was a mom named Dana. Short hair, round glasses, hands resting gently on the table like she was holding something fragile. I'm Charlotte, I said when it was my turn. I'm here because my daughter was hurt by someone in our family, and for months I was taught that if I spoke up, I'd destroy relationships. But my daughter doesn't need more relatives. She needs someone who will stand beside her. The room was quiet for a long moment. Then another parent nodded, then another. A father across the table murmured, I think we've all waited too long for someone to start talking. That night, when I shared it with Ellie, simply, just enough, she didn't say much. She opened her desk drawer and pulled out a piece of paper, folded into quarters. I was going to redraw that old picture, she said, but this time the deer walks out of the woods. I nodded, placing a hand on her shoulder. Maybe add some hills in the distance? I asked. Sure, and I think it should walk toward the light. A simple student art show became the first place Ellie spoke in front of a crowd. The exhibition was held in Lincoln Elementary's library, a red brick building nestled among maple trees losing their golden leaves. Early that morning, 3rd and 4th graders had arrived, eager to set up paintings, clay sculptures, and little popsicle stick models. Ellie clutched my hand as we stepped into the hallway. Her drawing was hung at the center of the Change and Hope gallery wall. A reddish-brown deer stepping out of the woods with a soft sun glowing in the distance. In the bottom right corner, written in felt-tip pen, sometimes the light doesn't find you. You have to walk out to it. It stood still, not because the picture was beautiful, but because the handwriting no longer trembled the way it once did. Her art teacher, Ms. Leona, came up beside me and whispered, Ellie picked this spot herself. She said she wanted it where everyone walking by has to see it. I squeezed my daughter's shoulder. Ellie didn't say anything, but her eyes scanned the room, as if looking to see who truly stopped to look. While I stood near the cookie table, I spotted a familiar face in the crowd. Andrew. No sharp suit, just a khaki jacket, rushed hair, and a sleep-deprived face. I didn't walk away. I didn't walk toward him either. I just stood there, waiting to see what he'd do. He looked around for a bit, then slowly approached, stopping an arm's length away. That painting, he started, voice lower than usual. Ellie made it? Yes, I replied. He nodded. She looks better than I expected. I turned to him. She doesn't need you to expect. She needs to be believed and left alone. Andrew exhaled, shoulders slumping slightly. I read your blog, he said, not out of curiosity. I wanted to understand what I didn't see. I didn't write it for you, I replied, not cold, but clear. I wrote it for the ones who were told they were too sensitive just for feeling hurt. He nodded, said nothing. A quiet moment settled between us. I'm not asking for your forgiveness, he said, but I won't let my mother speak for this family anymore. I didn't reply. I just looked at Ellie, who was showing a classmate the color she had mixed for the background, somewhere between turmeric yellow and earthy brown. So it looks like sunlight touching the leaves? The following week, Sylvia sent me a handwritten letter. It wasn't an apology, just a cream-colored page with neat cursive saying she felt hurt by being misunderstood, that the media is twisting the truth about Colin. And at the end, she wrote, "Either way, Ellie is always welcome back, when she's ready." I filed the letter away. No response. One afternoon during Ellie's weekly therapy session with Dr. Hudson, the child psychologist she sees, she shared a new dream. I dreamed I walked out of a house with a tall fence, and then the fence disappeared, Ellie said. Mom was waiting outside, then she held my hand and we walked. Were you scared when the fence disappeared? The doctor asked. No, I felt light. I turned away, pretending to study a picture on the wall. It was a cloud shaped like a heart. That night, after Ellie fell asleep, I sorted through her drawings by month, from thick black scribbles to open scenes with windows, roads, and light. At the same time, Marlene texted, the court had accepted the expanded file. Another family from Massachusetts agreed to give testimony. Same pattern, same child, Colin. It seemed the wall of silence was finally cracking. The hearing took place on a cold morning in late March, inside a small conference room at the Allegheny County Civil Courthouse. The room was lit by pale fluorescent lights with dark blue plastic chairs and 2 frosted glass doors that let me see people moving outside, though I couldn't hear them. I sat beside my attorney, Marlene. In front of us was a thick file, documents gathered from 4 different families, therapy notes, Ellie's drawings, and Dr. Hudson's latest report. I could feel the chill in my fingertips despite the heater humming nearby. Andrew sat across the table, next to his own lawyer. He didn't look at me, but his hand was clenched on his knee, the same way mine does when I'm too exhausted to react. When the court representative invited me to speak, I didn't look at the papers. I looked toward the beige wall behind the judge, where a round clock ticked, painfully slow. I'm not here to destroy anyone, I said. I'm here to protect my daughter and the children who don't have someone to stand up for them. I recounted the night Ellie curled up at the sound of a knock. The story no one believed at first, until the press got involved and the evidence started to align like puzzle pieces. I didn't cry. My voice stayed steady, pausing only when I repeated the words Ellie had said in her dreams. She doesn't need anyone to apologize yet. She needs peace. She needs to wake up every day knowing the world won't flip upside down and tell her her feelings aren't real. Andrew didn't speak during the rest of the hearing. He simply stood and signed the court's agreement, recognizing that my temporary sole custody would become permanent. After the judge announced the ruling, I left the room without looking back. Marlene touched my elbow gently, just enough to steady me. In the hallway outside, I saw an elderly couple sitting on the waiting bench. The woman held a folder like it was fragile. The man kept stroking the back of her hand. I didn't know their story, but I knew the feeling of standing at the edge, between truth and silence. That night, Ellie and I celebrated with a trip to the little ice cream shop near our home. It was cold, but she still chose strawberry. I'd just ordered a cup of ginger tea. Does that mean you don't have to talk to strangers tomorrow? Ellie asked, her mouth ringed with pink. For a long time, I think so. I don't hate Dad, but I like it here more. I nodded, saying nothing more. Ellie didn't need me to tell her how to feel. She just needed me to listen long enough to understand. The following weekend, I took Ellie to a spring break day camp on the west side of the city, a program designed for kids who've experienced emotional trauma. There, they learned to plant vegetables, write journals, and draw the things they can't say out loud. As I turned to leave, Ellie ran after me and called out, "Mom, don't forget to save the sunshine for me." I smiled, raising my hand like I was catching light from the gray sky. On the way home, I turned on the radio. A local station was replaying the investigative report that had aired over the past 2 weeks. My voice was mixed in, between expert interviews and other family stories. Not everyone agreed. There were harsh comments, anonymous messages. But there were also handwritten letters, long emails from people who had once been Ellie or Charlotte in their own stories. A mother from Vermont wrote, "I stayed quiet for 17 years, but because of you, my daughter now knows I've believed her from day one." I printed that letter and taped it inside the kitchen cabinet. Every morning while making coffee, I read it again, not for pride, but to remember where I'm headed. I didn't think a cup of tea on a chilly March night could make me feel whole, but sitting under the soft kitchen light, listening to the hum of the heater and Ellie's humming in the bathroom, I knew, slowly, we were finding our way back to each other. That April passed like someone was tidying up my life, drawer by drawer, box by box, empty space by empty space, filled with things worth keeping. I cleaned out my home office. The desk corner, once buried in court documents, now held a small reading lamp and pots of lavender. The Vermont woman's letter still hung nearby, next to one of Ellie's paintings. Two women standing in the rain, holding umbrellas, their smiles faint, but unmistakably surrounded by light. Marlene called me one Wednesday afternoon. "Congratulations," she said. "The state board passed the new policy this morning. Testimonies from Ellie's case are now official support documents." I didn't know what to say. I just sat there, looking out the window. The neighbor's apple tree was blooming, white, delicate, like small hands reaching out from winter. That night, Ellie drew another picture. This time it was a house on a hill with a winding path leading up to it, the door open and warm yellow light spilling onto the steps. "I'll draw it every year," Ellie said, "so our house always stays bright." I held her for a long time, said nothing. I didn't need to. At the end of the month, I posted a short message on a parenting forum. And if you're listening but unsure what to do, stay a little longer. Truth may not speak loudly, but it knows how to stay with those who are patient. I didn't expect much of a response, but day by day, messages came in from everywhere, people sharing things they had kept silent about for far too long. People thanking me for helping them feel less alone. An older woman from Nebraska wrote, "I was once Ellie, then I became the mother of a child just like her. Thank you for not staying silent." I printed that message and taped it next to the old letter. Under it, I wrote in pencil, "We are evidence for one another." In early June, Ellie finished the school year. During the end-of-year parent meeting, her teacher shared that she had joined the art group, no longer avoided story time, and sometimes even helped other kids speak up. After the meeting, Ellie walked me to the car, backpack too big for her frame. "I feel like I'm a tree with roots now," she said, eyes looking up at the early summer sky. I nodded, placing my hand gently on her head. "Yeah, and you're growing the right way." We drove home with the windows down, the wind threading through our hair, and an old song playing softly on the radio. That night, I let Ellie go to bed early and sat down to write a letter by hand. Not to anyone specific. I just wanted to leave something clear for another woman in another city, wondering whether to trust her child's voice. I can't tell you what's right, but I can say this: listening is never wrong. I folded the letter and tucked it into the card box in the living room. Maybe, one day, I'll meet someone who needs it. Before bed, I reread a journal entry I had written nearly a year ago, the night I took Ellie to the hospital. The handwriting was rushed, shaky, like I was trying to trap a memory before it got torn away from me. I didn't erase it, I just added a line at the bottom. And then we went on living, not forgetting, but no longer being consumed. I don't think anyone walks out of those months untouched, but I know we came out no longer alone. I don't know where you're listening from, in your car, before bedtime, or on a day when you needed a story to remind yourself to stand back up. Let me know where you're tuning in from. And if you'd like to hear more honest journeys like this one, don't forget to follow the channel. because the next story might be just what you need. Charlotte's story isn't just about seeking justice for her daughter. It's a powerful reminder of the strength found in trusting maternal instinct and speaking up. In real life, many people are forced into silence by fear, family pressure, or systemic failure. But as Charlotte has shown, perseverance, courage, and love can truly create change. No one should have to choose between truth and surface peace, because only truth brings lasting freedom.